Well, there it is. So I'll get this out of the way. I'm not going to spoil much of anything, but we are going to go over my thoughts on Steel Rising. If I do have anything to spoil, it'll be towards the end. But honestly, this one's probably going to be quick and easy because there wasn't a lot to it. It was pretty straightforward, pretty simple. Where do we start? What is Steel Rising? It's Souls-like that is set in a fantasy take of the French Revolution, and it has a very heavy emphasis on the robots. Granted, I say heavy emphasis, that's all you ever see. The humans that are in this are merely for plot points. They are only really to talk to. You don't ever fight a single human in this. I would argue that the character you play as is the most human-like out of everything. I digress. This was a Souls-like, and whenever it comes down to Souls-like, the most important thing, at least in my opinion, is the combat, in which this, I'll give it like a solid 8 out of 10. I want to give it a 9, like an 8.5/9 out of 10, but I do feel that there was a couple technical hiccups, just like a slight lack of polish. Like the targeting system was a little wonky for me, no matter how hard I tried. Even right here at the end, I was having some issues. And the variety, though there is plenty, it's not the most. There could be more variety to it. There is a decent amount of weapons, but for the most part, all of the weapons, there's like a certain few and then variants of those certain few. Whereas in like Elden Ring or even Bloodborne, there's quite a variety of them. So the enemies, there are a good amount of different enemies, but again, they reuse the same enemies with a different like elemental perk, if you will, and some of them are like the same enemies, but they switch up the weapons that they're using, so stuff like that. And then there are two kinds of bosses. There's the main like story bosses, and then there are like mini bosses. I forgot what they're called, but they're like basically like they're overcharged with whatever and they're kind of going crazy, so you gotta you just fight them, and they're basically just stronger variants of enemies that you fight around the world. The story bosses themselves, they are more unique, more well, actually not more unique, they straight up are unique. You only ever see the story bosses when you're fighting them. They're not reused as enemies later on. I really liked the voice acting. The animation for the acting was pretty cringe, not gonna lie. Weirdly enough, out of how good this game looked, the humans in it looked like shit. Like they really just didn't hold a candle to like the automats, for instance. Like every single enemy, every single one, even the annoying dog archetypes, even like the basic like trash mob ones, all of them were actually really cool and intricate looking, and I loved that. I thought that was really appealing. And so coupling the enemy variety, I'll give the enemy variety, the detail and everything like that to them, I'll give that like a 9 out of 10. My only complaint is that they reused a lot of them, but there were so many of them in the first place, and they reused them. They gave so many variants that there was just quite honestly a fuck ton of different enemies to go after. If you don't count the basic like enemy framework being reused, and you just like, okay, so this is an electric type, this is a fire type, this is a physical type. You can count all the different enemies. There's a lot of different enemies in this game, which is what I'm gonna boil it down to. For me, like I was seeing the same thing, but the design on them was so cool to begin with. Like it appealed to me so much to begin with that I don't really mind the reuse. So I'll give it like a 9 out of 10. Yeah, I'll give it an 8 out of 10. Because whereas the base enemies were sort of plentiful, the main bosses were not. There weren't a lot of main bosses, and I think that's really where the game shined, because that's where the combat varied itself the most. That's where your skills and everything were really put to the test. It's not a hard game at all, I don't think. I mean, with the Souls-like genre, you're gonna have a little bit of a learning curve getting into it. But once you find your, groove, once you get a weapon that works for you and you level yourself up a bit, specifically into the stat that weapon scales with, you'll find that you're just going through stuff. Like, I'm at the end of the game one-shotting shit that I am more or less at that level for. Like, at the end of the game, the final area, I'm able to one-shot stuff here. So, and some of the harder things, I may not one-shot it, but I'll get it within like 2 to 5% health in one shot. So yeah, a strength build will definitely carry you on. I really did like the lore and the story of the game was pretty good. The main story was like, I've heard it a million times, but the lore surrounding it, all of like how the automats were made, how they work, a couple of like the side quest stories, really fucking cool actually. Like, I was super interested, and that's one of the main motivators that pushed me through this game. Where I said the weapon is like, there wasn't like a ton of different weapons, there are like the weapons that are in there are all really cool. Really cool. You've got a mace that has like a shotgun blast to it. You've got like metal fans that you can do parries with. You've got a halberd that you can shoot like a rifle. You've got a musket that you can use as a shield. Like, there's a lot of different stuff. So I'll give them like a 10 out of 10 on creativity in the weapons department, but like an 8 out of 10 in weapon variety. Trying to think of what else I can really go over, because there's just, like I said, there wasn't a lot to this game. The voice acting was spectacular. The story itself, the main story, it was passable, serviceable. I didn't really find myself too interested in the game as much as I did, the game's main story, as I did the side content and stuff, which I just said. So I'll give him credit. It was very interesting. I was very compelled to explore every nook and cranny and do all the extra content. So overall, I will say that this game, it's a 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10. I'll go 9. I'm gonna go with a 9 out of 10. It had everything I was hoping for. The combat was brilliant. It was beautifully balanced. It was very well, like, let me articulate this better. It was very balanced. It was super diverse. It had a lot of variety to it, though some things I did notice repeating over time. It was still varied and plentiful enough to where I was always feeling challenged. Even with my, what I considered a pretty broken setup, I was still very susceptible to getting killed. I never felt invincible. Granted, I did feel overpowered, never felt invincible. It was always a occasional enemy move that I just wasn't aware of or I wasn't ready for that would catch me off guard. And I thought that was really compelling too. That gave me more incentive to keep going at it. And I did find myself a couple times just running around, killing stuff, and just doing the loop a few times just to grind for souls, if you will. Just because I found it fun. The gameplay was really fun. I'm kind of like rambling all over the place here, so we'll tie it up in a nice, neat little bow. I'll give the game a 9 out of 10. I think if you're coming into it wanting to play a new Souls-like, this will definitely impress. It's got a lot of content. It's not the longest game, but there's a lot to do. The backtracking isn't as tedious as it is in a lot of other games. You'll find yourself going to new areas. The abilities, I'll admit there's some gamer logic going on with it. Like, she gains the ability to dash in midair. It's not like an equipment upgrade. She just, oh, I beat this boss, now I can dash in the air. Kind of dorky, but whatever. And like a good Zelda game, all of these traversal abilities are also applicable in combat, which was really cool. So on top of having a weapon variety, you've got some special moves that you can use pretty much with any weapon. So that was actually really cool. The map design in itself was awesome. Probably one of the better Souls-like world maps. And that I mean, like, the map design, the actual like tab for the map, though artistic and cool, it was lame because all it did is show the different areas, not the actual detailed like maps of each area. But like, as the world design, the way that the paths loop around, there's shortcuts, there's side areas, there's all these different things. I really like that. It was really appealing, and I found myself just kind of like looking off into the distance a lot. I mean, shit, you saw me taking a bunch of screenshots. So the map, the world design, really stellar. Again, if you're going into this, you want a good Souls, like, this is probably the best one I've played since Neo and Code Vein. I'd put it right up there with like the Surge, even the Surge 2. The Surge 1 was a lot smaller and shorter of a game, but the Surge 2, 1 and 2 put together, I think make a great game themselves. And this one, it holds its own. I haven't beaten Greedfall. I actually just had started it and maybe played it for a couple hours and got distracted with other games at the time. So I do still need to go back and play it. But this studio, in my opinion, this is probably their best game to date. Just flat out. And again, they knocked it out of the park with the aesthetic design. The look of all of the robots, the intricate detail of locations that you're quite literally just running through, all of it beautiful. If you look at a lot of the artwork and stuff, I should say artwork, but like the metal work and stuff on doors, on just windowsills, on walls, on all of this stuff that you wouldn't normally give a second thought to, that has absolutely no factor on the gameplay or story progression or anything like that. They put a ton of detail into this, and it paid off. Like I said, it looks great. The only thing in this game I think that doesn't look great are the human character models. Some of them are not that bad. Other ones are really bad. Like, holy shit. But that's neither here nor there. I genuinely really enjoyed my time with this game. I'm kind of sad that it's over, but I'm also glad that it is, because now I can move on to play something else. I couldn't recommend this enough to anybody that wants to play another Souls-like game in the genre. It's definitely well priced. I think if you can get this for $40 or less, it will be worth every penny. Even if you just play through the story straight and don't really go off too much on the side content, I still think you'll definitely get your money's worth out of this. It'll be time well spent. And yeah, so just to summarize again, I'm gonna give this game a 9 out of 10. I was leaning towards 8, but I feel like the 8 is probably more indicative of my personal nitpicks, whereas just an objective, trying not to go too critical on my own personal feelings, I feel like this would be a 9 out of 10. And I know that might sound a little weird, but to elaborate on that, there are certain things about this game I personally would have done differently, but for the ends to justify the means, I think this game did exactly what it set out to do. Same as the Surge, same as Bloodborne, same as Neo. They had a mission and they accomplished it. They delivered a satisfying media experience in the Souls-like spectrum. And again, any Souls fan will like this game. They might also have nitpicks here and there, but overall, this checks a lot of boxes. I would say the only thing that it probably doesn't check is just like hundreds of hours of content. But you can replay this, you can go through the story again, use different weapons, use different skills, do a bunch of different stuff. So it definitely has replayability. So yeah, again, last time I'm gonna say it, 9 out of 10 game. Highly recommend it to anybody that's into the Souls-like genre. If you're not a big Souls-like fan, probably not gonna get a ton out of this. It might be fun a little bit, might not actually get to finishing it because there's a lot of confusing elements to the map and the world itself that, unless you're kind of in tune with the genre, it's just going to come off as a slog. You're not going to understand stuff. You're going to probably get stuck and or walled at certain points, and it's just not going to be that great of an experience. However, I do encourage people that have never even played Dark Souls to give this game a try, because if you want to get into the Souls-like genre, this is a really good starting point. I mean, Dark Souls is always going to be the best starting point, but this is a good one to kind of get into it without it being so brutally challenging. This one's more of a mental challenge, if anything, because some of the areas are a little confusing to navigate, especially for like the main path. It's a little weird because in this game there's the jumping aspect to it, jumping and climbing and vaulting over things, that makes the path forward not so direct. But that aside, you know, I think it's a great game for beginners and series long, well, I shouldn't say series, but genre long vets. I think this will satisfy a lot of taste. But yeah, if you haven't played it, the game is called Steel Rising. It's I believe on all the consoles, PC. I think the only thing it's not on is Switch. So yeah, go give it a shot, and that's my thoughts.